Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance to Save Energy Global Forum webinar series on how to drive energy efficiency through ISO 50001 implementation. My name is Andrew Heiner, and I'm an energy manager for 3M. I've been with 3M for 27 years, and for the past 15 years, my main focus was on ISO 50001 implementation and energy efficiency improvements. Just a reminder before we start the session, please enter your questions through the Q&A bubble at the bottom of the screen. And now we are going to present our first guest, Pete Langlois from U.S. Department of Energy. Pete is a program manager for U.S. Department of Energy's Advanced Manufacturing Office in Washington, D.C. He is leading the DOE's ISO 50001 related assistance programs, which provides tools and guidance to convey recognition of all types of organizations that are implementing an energy management system and culture. Prior joining the Department of Energy in 2016, Pete spent the previous 2 decades supporting various manufacturing industries as an engineer, journalist, strategy consultant, and sustainability specialist primarily with the global accounting firm Ernst & Young. Pete is a certified energy manager and a lead accredited professional, and he has a Bachelor of Science degree in Aerospace Engineering from Purdue University and a Master's of Science degree in Business from the Johns Hopkins University. Pete, I guess floor is, or should I say screen is yours. Please start your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Andrew. I appreciate it. And for all of you on the line today, thank you for taking the time to join us. And my apologies. I'm the reason we're a couple minutes late. This is the second computer I had to try and log on to Zoom. So all these fun things we're all going through in this this time, minor compared to everything else going on. So please stay safe. And again, appreciate you taking the time to be with us. As Andrew mentioned, I'm with Department of Energy. This specifically in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And the first thing you might be thinking is, what does Department of Energy care? Other than energy is in the name. And so if you want to jump to the next slide, I'll tell you, because energy is in our name, but we're never going to be a regulatory agency that's going to say, hey, if you don't save energy, we're going to punish you. And by the same token, we're not in a position where you can say, okay, you save energy, we'll give you some money back, or we'll give you a tax break. We can't do that. So what are the tools that I have at my disposal? And why? Why do we care? And this is exactly why. We're looking for U.S. industry to ultimately save energy. As a result, they'll save money, and then they can reinvest that money in their employees, their communities, research and development. There's all sorts of benefits to saving energy besides just the monetary ones, of course. But when it comes down to it, a lot of what we're trying to do at Department of Energy is to do that and ultimately go back and there we go and invest that money in manufacturing jobs. So that's why we do what we do. Next slide, please. So specifically where I work, I mean, much of what my office does is fund research and development that's for technologies that are, quite a ways out. But there's a group that I work in called Technical Partnerships that specifically is looking to do things that are, I guess, more practical, if you will, to help organizations right now. And specifically, we're trying to prove out, what is the benefits to continual energy improvement. You'll see the 2 logos there on the bottom on the left or so are the 2 programs that I manage, 50001 Ready and Superior Energy Performance. And we'll talk a little bit more about them going forward. But I did want to let you know about some other ones in DOE that we work with closely, the Better Plants and Better Buildings programs that encourage energy efficiency on a more corporate basis, where we specifically do things around energy management systems. Next slide, please. So again, what made us think, okay, we should be doing it in this particular way? And the DOE's been involved with the creation of ISO 50001 10 years ago or so. But in working with organizations like Andrew since then and understanding, okay, well, what are the benefits of it? And part of it is we're trying to prove that out, build that business case, help organizations understand that if you do this, you'll get this, or you could at least make the case that this would be a reasonable understanding. We did a review in 2017 from 43 facilities that had gone through the process and seen average savings of over 4% year over year. So we're seeing that as a significant improvement over business as usual. So again, We want to encourage this, but we're not in a position to give tax breaks or punish people, so how do we do it? Next slide. So with that, part of it was the thinking back in terms of, okay, well, how can we address the reasons we're not seeing a big uptake of the ISO 50001 standard in the United States, like you might have seen in other parts of the world? And part of the things are things I've mentioned already. Not only the regulatory requirements not being there, there's not financial incentives, but the market drivers. Some of you on this call may have done things at your facilities where you're certified to ISO 9001 for quality or 14001 for environmental systems, and there might have been a situation where your customer was asking you for that. That's not exactly the case typically for ISO 50001, so we're trying to figure out how to help with that. Other organizations, especially if there's no other compelling reason, don't want to go through the hassle or the cost of a certification audit. And lastly, what I've termed here is flexibility paralysis. If we sat down and read the ISO 50001 standard, and we could probably over the course of this call, it may take you 30 to 45 minutes. I've likened it to, I have a lot of birthdays coming up in my family. I've likened it to the idea that ISO 50001 says you need to make a cake. You need to bake a cake. It's 3 layers. It's such and such a color. It's got icing, whatever. And that's it. There's so much you can do with that, but how do you get started? And that's a lot of what we're trying to do with our 50001 Ready program. We want to be the recipe. We want to be the coach in the kitchen to help you bake a wonderful energy management cake. Next slide, please. So that was the idea behind 50001 Ready. We try to address some of these impediments, some of these barriers. We've set up a system where it's not a certification, but it is a recognition from the Department of Energy. And so we ask essentially that organizations self-attest that they've completed the process, that there is no external audit. We can provide the guidance, the training, the management tools to help you bake that cake. And then when it's done, ultimately what we want to do is provide some recognition, promotion, build that business case so that other organizations understand that, okay, here's the benefits and why we might want to go about doing this, if in fact your culture is ready to do that. Some of the training we've done, okay, we got Andrew on camera. There's the picture from our 3M training. I don't know how I managed to skip out of being in that back in our days of pre-social distancing. But those are the types of things that if you're a member of the Better Plants program, we can ultimately fund for free if it works out as something you can apply to do with our program. Currently, we have over 80 locations that are recognized as being 50001 Ready, but some of these are massive energy consumers. And so when I did the math on this, I almost couldn't believe it myself, that ultimately the program is encompassing facilities that have the equivalent consumption of nearly 3 million US households. And we're very proud of that, but we certainly want to see that grow. Next slide, please. So the idea in terms of how would you get recognized, we've taken that ISO 50001 standard and what I call boiled it down into 25 tasks. I don't want to say bite-sized necessarily, but we tried to make it more comprehensible and ultimately, a step-by-step approach on how you get started. From that, though, we are the big bad federal government. We're not going to be looking over your shoulder every moment. It's essentially an online checklist. But we do want, when you're completed with the process, to go ahead and submit a baseline level of energy performance data so that we can understand and track necessarily how much these things help, but also the scope of our program. And then lastly, as I mentioned, to self-attest that you've completed the navigator tasks, and then we will recognize your facility for its achievement. Next step, next slide, please. So I did mention earlier about ISO 9001 and 14001. Just want to put a quick plug in here. If you've done this already and there's experience, maybe not even at your facility, but within your organization, you are well on your way to being in a good position for implementing ISO 50001 if you so choose. It's kind of that, back to my cake analogy, a layer of energy management icing on top of a continual improvement cake that you've already got in place as it relates to either quality or environmental policy. If not, don't worry. We certainly have on our online tools organizations that start from square one, no idea, never done this before. But if you have some prior experience with ISO management systems, you're a big step along the way. Next slide, please. I know there's a lot of people on this call aren't necessarily manufacturers, but in typical fashion, ISO 50001 has seen its biggest uptake with manufacturers. So I didn't want to highlight some of them here, although we're certainly always looking for other types of facilities to be involved. What we can do, again, once the companies have worked through the process, is promote those success stories and get out there. Obviously, 2020 was a terrible year in terms of us doing in-person events with our Department of Energy leaders or politicians are out there celebrating achievements. We're doing as much as we can of it virtual. I look forward to 2021 where we can do more of that potentially in real life. We will see, but to that extent, in the interim, we try to do as much as we can, virtually online with our websites and newsletters and that sort of thing. Happy to get the word out, and again, celebrate folks. We're going through the effort of putting in place an energy management culture. Next slide, please. And a few things that we've noticed along the way that I thought might be helpful for everyone. And I do want to point out that picture there on the right in terms of it's not just manufacturers. I think this is one of our most striking locations, and it's a building there in Manhattan that I think just reopened for business earlier this week. So we'll be looking forward to see how the energy goes with that. The main point I want to say about energy management systems in general and our program is it's an enabler to help you achieve any of your other energy management or sustainability goals. So what you would want to do is essentially align your corporate goals and then have this as an element that can help you along the way. We've created a lot of tools that I would call one size fits most. But we can't obviously anticipate everything. So we've had a lot of organizations, and Andrew may talk about this a little bit, I don't know, that have ultimately customized what we've provided for what works best in their organization. There's some other tips here we can talk about more unnecessarily on the Q&A if you want. The last point there is energy can be everyone's responsibility. I might rephrase that. I don't want to make it everybody's responsibility or a burden, but there's not necessarily an understanding with everyone of how what they do really can impact the energy management and the energy culture within your organization. And going through this process, I think, brings that lesson home pretty powerfully to members of your team who you might not have thought who have been involved. Next slide is the last one, and I'm sure we're going to provide these, all the links to our particular information pages online and things about our program. Happy to talk about that more in the questions, or obviously reach out to me after the fact. That phone number at the very bottom, eventually I'll be back to that phone. We will see. Until that time, everyone stay safe, and I look forward to the Q&A later on. And I don't know if I turn it back over to Andrew or specifically to John. Oh, yeah, to Andrew, sorry.
So, yeah, thank you, Pete, for a fantastic presentation. As everybody can see, we kind of designed this webinar to start with what Department of Energy can offer in terms of help for ISO 50001 implementation. Now it's my turn to talk a little bit about the implementation process and how it works and how it helped us to improve energy efficiency. And then John will be the last person to present, talking on the actual certification process. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So our company, 3M, has been around for over 118 years now. We are the science company where we basically apply science to life. Our vision is to have our technology advancing every company, our products enhancing every home, and our innovation improving every life. We make about 60,000 different products, employ about 80,000, probably a little bit more people globally now. And we have a footprint on every continent. If you can go to the next slide, please. So our corporate climate and energy goals are very aggressive. In sustainability, we have 5 areas of goals, but my main focus is on energy and climate. So the first 30%, if you will, for the energy efficiency, is to improve our energy efficiency by 30% by year of 2025 from 2015 base year in energy indexed to dollars of sales. The second part is in renewables. So we will be 50% electricity renewable by 2025. And then the next 50% is in internal emissions. We want to be below 2002 level by 50%. The very last one is we want our customers to save 250 million tons of emissions through our products. And 3M makes many products that can help to enhance energy efficiency. If we can go to the next slide, please. So how do we do that? So there are 3 areas of those sustainability goals my team, energy team, can influence. And those are energy efficiency, renewable energy, and greenhouse gas emission. And energy efficiency is the key. With improving energy efficiency, we would improve our renewable energy content, if you will, making more efficient facilities require less renewable electricity going to them, and also will improve our greenhouse gas emissions. And how do we do this? Through energy management standards. Energy reporting and monitoring is very important, and then design and technology projects. Of course, with renewables, we have 2 options. We can own and we can buy through our PPAs and virtual PPAs, and then reduce fossil fuel dependence for greenhouse gas emission reduction. We can go to the next slide, please. So what is ISO 50001? It's basically a framework that works on the same principle as many ISO standards on a plan, do, check, act type of cycle. There is another program which we firmly believe in, and it's a next step to ISO 50001 called Superior Energy Performance. I'm not going to spend too much time on it during this presentation, but it basically brings a little bit more rigid, stringent requirements for measuring your performance improvements and performance claims. If we can go to the next slide, please. So right now, 3M has 31 sites globally ISO 50000 certified, pretty much all over the place. We are in a very specific situation here on this continent. So if we can go to the next slide, where we implemented an enterprise model. And the enterprise model has many, many benefits. First of all, after implementing so many different sites, we noticed that there are many common components to ISO 50001. So we wanted to make sure that those common components are shared between all the facilities. Another big benefit from having an enterprise model is visibility to really top management of the corporation. And another one is in a certifying stage. When you have a working enterprise model, the certifying body uses an equation square root of n for sampling facilities for external certification. So if you can imagine, if you have 49 facilities certified, only 7 will be audited. So very big benefit there. And right now in 2020, because of the pandemic and restrictions on travel, most of the work which involving ISO 50000 implementation can be done virtually. So we decided to add 16 plants to our implementation cohort, if you will. 16 meaning that we will only have to externally audit 4, and the list of those plants is on the right-hand side of the screen. And we are also testing this globally. So our 2 sites in Singapore are going through implementation process right now. And we will see if we can seamlessly bring them under the enterprise model and then expand globally. Can we go to the next slide, please? So when it comes to energy management, I always say that there are 3 pillars to successful energy management, which is metering, technology, and projects and people. So we can go to the next slide. So metering, why? Because what you don't measure, you can't control. This is very, very true for energy. Energy is invisible. We do it through sub-metering. We establish energy baselines, and then we provide real-time energy information for operating personnel. And of course, we provide reporting for top management for tracking and budgeting. Can we please go to the next slide? The second pillar of energy management systems is technology. There are some areas we focus the most. It's basically as heat recovery, steam solvent, those systems we work on optimizing their energy efficiency. We have a few combined heat and power units which serve us very well, but there are some specific requirements where and when you can install them. Chillers and HVAC, that's another area of focus. Conditioning of air is very expensive. This $5 per CFM per year is a low estimation. I think it's actually a little bit higher. Compressed air is the most expensive source of energy. Most of you probably know that 7 horsepower of electricity is used to produce only 1 horsepower of compressed air, and about 30% of that air leaks through compressor leaks. So it's very, very expensive. And then, no-brainer, I probably have to remove this from this presentation. LED lights, everybody knows them now. So very mature technology now. People, yeah, please go to the next slide. Next slide, please, yeah. People, the most important pillar of energy efficiency. Why? Production staff operates and knows the equipment the best. Employee better retention and satisfaction. When I talk to our employees, they like what we are doing sustainability-wise, and they are very, very proud of our achievements, and increased trust in management, obviously. And how do we do that? We do it through employee suggestion program. We have events like Earth Days, of course, this year. It was mostly a virtual event. So we have energy conservation awareness campaigns. We have energy training. I'm residing in Canada, and 3M Canada employees, every single employee got to go through a basic energy training. Why do we want to conserve energy? Why do we want to increase efficiency? What is it in it for us, and how can you help? We basically ask our employees that they contribute. Everybody can contribute, and let them know that they matter. So we can go to the next slide. So the implementation process is very similar to all ISO implementation processes. We started with senior management commitment. We established the team, and then we spent some time with the team on training. The team understood the standard. The gap assessment, which is basically a tool which shows you how far are you overall to that implementation finish line. And the graph on the right-hand side, it shows actual site we worked on. And as you can see, they started with 30% about the very last overall bar graph. That's how we start assessing how much work is in the front of us. And then, of course, work plan definition, execution of the work plan, regap to ensure that we didn't miss anything, and then certification. And as Pete said, it could be internal, that would satisfy 50,001 ready, or it could be external. And we decided to go with external certifications, which John will talk about in the next presentation a bit. If we can go to the next slide, please. So key success factors, senior management commitment, that's a must. Employee engagement and support, expert consultant support. So like Pete said, through training and through, just getting to know your local utility companies and how they can help you to support you in this implementation process. Government and local energy supplier support, rigorous project tracking and information system, existing quality and environmental management systems like ISO 9001 and 14001 definitely help. And prior investment in energy management systems, which 3M started this energy journey in 1974 when we appointed the first corporate energy manager, and been working on energy efficiency ever since. I think this is the last slide. We can go to the next one just to make sure. Oh no, we still have another slide. We received some recognition last year. We received a very prestigious Clean Energy Ministerial Global Awards, Excellence in Energy Management, that was a corporate award, and then Insight Award for Free in Canada. And then we received a few awards in Canada as well from the government and some other organizations. Next step, please. Slide. Yeah, that's it. So thank you very much. And our next presenter, of course, I'm waiting for a Q&A session after the last presentation. But our next presenter is John Reed. Sorry, John, if I butchered your last name.
That's all right, Andrew.
Yeah, for over 27 years, CWB has been certifying companies in 40 or more industry sectors in North America and globally. John is a sales and business development manager for CWB, and CWB is actually Canadian Welding Bureau. They have a very large certification arm, and its headquarters in Milton, Ontario, with offices in Winnipeg and Laval. CWB is accredited to many ISO standards, including 9000, 9001, 14001, 45001, ISO 50001, and Superior Energy Performance program as well. So please go ahead, John.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the introduction, and I thank you for the opportunity to share with you today the benefits of ISO 50001 SEP and the CWB group. Next slide, please, and click it. No sound. The sound didn't come through. Well, this was a pretty cool video. It went through everything that that we do, everything with ISO 50001 SEP. It identifies our also identifies our virtual audits that we're doing now, and hopefully we can get some sound to it.
Not working.
No, I don't hear it.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with our Zoom. I'm sorry about that, John.
Hold on here. Let's just see. I'm on.
Oh, wait, here we go. I think I got it.
All right.
Let's try again. That work?
There we go. Yeah. Perfect.
ISO 50001 Energy Management System is a voluntary international framework for the management of energy in any business size. CWB Registration can audit your company, large or small, with an audit team customized to your product or service. Certification services are centrally administered and are uniformly available to clients across North America. There are many benefits to using ISO 50001, including credible energy and cost savings, continuous improvement, energy security, energy efficiency, reduction of GHG emissions and environmental impact, persistence, and external financial incentives. Implementation of ISO 50001 will assist organizations in reducing energy use through the utilization of best practices, measurement and reporting disciplines, and promoting energy efficiency throughout the supply chain. CWB Registration is now offering virtual audits. Most customers have never experienced a remote audit before. Our auditors explain the process thoroughly and make the customer comfortable with the process. CWB Registration delivers this service by having our auditor contact the client and explain the various options. After we get approval from the customer, the auditor confirms the audit date with the customer. The auditor ensures the preferred information and communication technology is agreed upon with the customer and tested before the audit. A meeting invite is set up and the audit process is carried out remotely. Due to the recent developments around COVID-19, most customers are not allowing visitors to their premises. Virtual audits can be safer and more cost-effective to conduct auditing. CWB Registration allows you to meet your company's objectives, improve performance and customer experience by implementing auditing services. Our team of experts is committed to establishing a relationship with your organization. Our industry expertise and experience will help you achieve your goals. Get the CWB Registration Advantage.
Well, thank you. I apologize for the little inconvenience there, but we'll move forward. Just to give you a background on the CWB, the CWB registration, formerly known as Quasar, was established in 1993, providing auditing for ISO certifications for over 40 industry sectors in North America and globally. As Andrew previously mentioned, the CWB is credited for ISO 9000, 14001, 45001 with the SCC, and with ANAB for ISO 50001 and SEP. Today, we're certifying companies in manufacturing, structural steel, construction, transportation equipment, fabrication for shipbuilding, and many, many others. Continuous client satisfaction is derived from our expertise, our experience, and our commitment to excellence for every audit we do. Working with and preparing clients through the auditing process to be most effective companies in their business sector is important to the CWB as we look for the growth of our clients in the industries. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, just to get through the benefits of ISO 50001 and why it's important to companies to move forward with it. The biggest part of it is the reduction of energy cost. This is ensuring that companies save energy and reduce energy cost. It also offers measurable results, performance improvements is required year over year, strengthening the competitiveness of your organization, reducing vulnerability due to fluctuating energy prices, continuous improvement, identifying additional energy savings and opportunities year after year, persistence. It's the systematic approach, the plan, do, check, and act, always looking for a better way of doing business and also utilizing best practices. Fixed targets. These targets are set with the support of management, and management is a very key area within the ISO 50001 registration. These enable a company to achieve the right and desired results for energy savings. Efficiency. The measurement and success of ISO 50001. This is achieved through the increased energy efficiencies in the plant and specific areas within the companies. And the biggest thing that is needed with ISO 50001 and SEP is a full company participation. Reduced emissions, improving the environment by decreasing greenhouse gases through lower energy use. Next slide, please. Benefits of superior energy, SEP. This was influenced by the government and industry, the DOE, with bodies such as the U.S. Council for Energy Efficiency Manufacturing, included input from industry standards authorities, federal agencies, national laboratories, technical experts, and that were instrumental in the development of SEP. The importance of SEP in conjunction with ISO 50001 helps organization track, analyze, and prove continuous improvement. Generate cost savings, it's a quick ROI. Return on investment is usually 2 years or less in most cases. And the companies that are putting it in are looking anywhere from 6 to 25%, depending on the energy usage that they're doing in a 3-year period. It provides transparent and credible verification of the continual energy performance improvement. It's very needed in the industries today. Prerequisite, companies seeking SEP should either be registered for or meet the benchmark of ISO 50001. ISO 50001 is very important as it provides the framework for the company to use the energy management system to increase efficiency. SEP then specifies requirements beyond ISO 50001 that include performance criteria and additional requirements. Defines the procedures used to measure and verify energy performances, and defines best practices used for a mature energy pathway. Next slide, please. As we all know, benefits of the third-party registrar are always talked about. It's not only the benefits, but it's the importance. The knowledge and validation, sharing best practices. Our auditors come in and can talk to you about best practices for your individual programs, industry-wide knowledge of the expertise that we bring to the program, and provide recommendations for growth. Expertise, experience in industrial specialized auditors provide a unique perspective to each audit. They bring value. Objectivity. Each audit is a neutral assessment, very important. And review of the company's system and processes, eliminating the natural familiarity that occurs with internal staff audits. Outside eyes are always better. Energy uses reporting is deemed to be more reliable by the market through third parties. Accountability for energy managers, employees, holding everyone accountable. Very important in our industry today. Results, providing an accurate review within multiple environments of the company for energy savings. Everybody wants results and showing year over year within the ISO 50001 and SEP. Lower business impact through third-party auditors. Time and labor resources are reduced and allowed to spend more time on valuable other overall business functions. Third-party audits are conducted with interviews scheduled in advance. They're not just walked in the door and done. They're done in advance, and they're done in an efficiency manners. Next slide, please. The implementation process. I kind of talk here about what are needed as companies come on board in the implementation. The planning, defining the scope, management commitment are very important items in those. The energy team, creating the launching and the internal programs. All of those are in the planning stage before you ever get to coming to the CWB or other registrars to become registered. The energy review, data collection. In most cases, we look at companies that are needing 12 months of data to analyze properly, to set their indicators for the future. Review of the significant energy uses, SEUs. Targets, improvements of opportunity. All these are in the energy review. Look at what are the improvements going to be for a company before, during, and after the registration. From the onset, continually monitoring measurements is crucial in establishing the controls and the corrective actions for improvement as we go through not only the implementation, but through the total registration process year after year. Management, document and records, communication on a regular basis, internal audits, management review, integrated accountability. Next slide, please. So what is the CWB Advantage? we look at ourselves in a very, very positive way. CWB prides itself on quick responses, time to client inquiries for registration. From the initial contact to the auditing process, we look at easing the process with the client, working with them on a regular basis. Client satisfaction, with a satisfaction rating of over 90%, resounds the experience and commitment that we have as a team providing each and every client. The expertise of our staff, technically experienced, meet the needs of the clients, providing support and feedback for implementation. This CWB team includes customer service, sales, administration, scheduling, and also, most importantly, our world-class auditors. Knowledgeable. Our auditors are knowledgeable. They're trained in the areas of expertise, proven, and especially for our clients, they are subject matter experts. The flexibility. We don't just do large companies. We don't just do small companies. We do anything from large to small. We look at meeting the customer's expectations. And it's evident in our recent pandemic with the addition of our virtual audits in order to meet our clients' needs going forward. And our standard in-person on-site audits at our locations are always planned with the client so that we have flexibility in meeting their needs and not just walking in and doing it on our leisure time. We are accredited, as I said previously, to ANAB and ISO 50001 and Superior Energy across North America. And that is the CWB Advantage, and I hopefully will get some questions and answers to what was presented.
Thank you, John. Really fantastic presentation. I really loved the video. I hope you will be able to share that with us.
Yes.
It looks like we have about 15 minutes left for questions and answers, and we have few questions already on a Q&A bubble. So let me ask Pete, you in your 12.5% savings achieved due to change of culture or due to adoption of technology. What is it? What do you think? What the split would be between the two?
Thanks, Andrew. And I think I can address a few of the questions actually in the Q&A by talking about this a little bit. I didn't go into too much detail about SEP. Thank you, Andrew and John, for doing that. But for those who aren't familiar, it's initial certification on top of ISO 50001 such that you're verifying the energy savings results. So by doing ISO 50001 to get certified, you're going to have to demonstrate some energy performance calculations. Typically, that's a top-down model. What happens also with the auditing and verification for SEP is you'll then take a bottom-up calculation as it relates to the projects that have been implemented and essentially compare the two results and make sure everything squares. That's where our 12% over 3 years data comes from 43 facilities that have gone through the SEP process. So we're very confident in the sense that, okay, that's what the actual savings that they're actually seeing. Now, the breakdown is the great part. And this is where I would love more companies to be involved, both in 50001 Ready and SEP, so that we can see this data, update it, build on it, and understand. What we saw from that data set was 75% of that calculated improvement came from what we would describe as low and no cost efforts, projects, what have you. Andrew talked about compressed air. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do around compressed air leaks, or variable speed drives, or occupancy sensors, or just all sorts of things that we would typically describe as behavioral or cultural changes that don't require some big capital investment. So the numbers that we saw from, again, that data set were about 3/4 low and no cost improvements and about 1/4 from actually doing some sort of big technical upgrade.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate this. Now, one question I hear a lot is how long and how much does it take to implement ISO 50001? And we've been 3M that is doing this for almost 9 years now. We started in 2011. Actually, we started this process in 2010 and got certified in 2011. And the first implementation took us over a year, and it was close to like $90,000. It was very, very time-consuming and expensive because we hired external consultants and had to add some sub-metering and things like that. Going through those 31 sites, we developed a process which now we can implement ISO 50000 in about 16 weeks. So it's like a 4-month process. And the time we need to spend on this implementation went down significantly, but also the cost, because now we have a specialized group who implement ISO 50001 internally. We don't really have to hire consultants and anyone else. So due time is basically, due cost is basically the major cost, and especially with ISO 50001 enterprise approach, we save lots of money on external auditing. Another question I think is going to be for John. Is, John, what are the initial steps in the process of registration to ISO 50001? Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, once we make contact with the client, we give them documents to provide back to us for the request for quote, which these identify the type of facility they are, the energy consumption, the number of energy sources, number of significant energy uses, and the number of effective personnel. From this, once we get this information, we can create the quote based on the information supplied by the client. And conversation with the client to confirm all information as we walk through the process, verifying what they have, whether it's a multi-site is also very, very important. We're getting into more plants that there's numerous plants not only in North America but in other countries, so we have to verify all those. We then create the quote for the client based on the information, and the pricing is all variable to the information that has been produced. And then once signed, the customer is entered into our system, and the interaction with the auditor starts for the processing of the scheduling of the audits and the audit plans and everything from there. So, the actual process to get registration is once the company is ready to go with their internal audits, could be very, very short period of time. You could be looking, 45 days if you're ready to go and you've had your internal audit. To those that may not be currently ready, could be anywhere from 6 months to a year. So it varies according to where the company is on ready for process.
Thank you so much, John. Very, very good answer. Pete, obviously, you might be able to help us with this question. Are there any financial incentives for industries to implement ISO 50001? You mentioned that in the US, there are no direct financial incentives, but maybe you can help us to understand this.
I mean, I wish there were, although maybe that would put me out of a job if there was, no need for the Department of Energy to do our encouragement work, if you will. And maybe I'll also try and address the international question that came in the Q&A on this too. The thing that I found that was completely foreign to me, I joined DOE 4 years ago, and I had no idea how this worked, was the utility strategic energy management programs. They're pretty common throughout the United States. And for those, I can't talk to other countries, but we've worked with a lot of different utilities and their programs to try and essentially get the 50001 ready in process embedded into them, such that if you're working with your utility, and this is usually only applicable to some large energy user, and you go through their program, then the ready process or doing ISO 50001 in some form would put you in a position so that you would get whatever those rebates were as it relates to your utility. That's about the only thing that we've come across here in the United States where we encourage people to make sure you're taking advantage of that type of program. For other parts around the world, and I hinted at this a little bit, there are, I guess, situations where I don't know of any where ISO 50001 itself is mandated. So that would obviously be the opposite of incentive. But in a situation like Germany, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, the tax break was so substantial that there was essentially no reason not to do it if you could. So it was almost a de facto penalty if you didn't. I can cite what also is typical, or well, maybe becoming more typical. Had some discussions with some folks with one of the state governments in Australia, where they are putting, in fact, a regulation in place where you have to do some form of energy management, again, targeted toward large energy users, where ISO 50001 is one of the ways to meet that requirement. So it's not necessarily a mandate to get ISO certified, but it is something that works in context or in line with that sort of requirement. So those sorts of things are happening. I'm not a particular expert outside the United States, but again, reach out to me for those who have the follow-up questions related to both, either the utility incentives in the US or what's going on outside the US, and we can probably put you in touch with more information about that.
And I can probably talk a little bit about Canadian incentives, if there are any Canadians online. We have $40,000 per implementation incentive provided by the federal government. So that usually helps with pretty much half of the implementation cost or more. And in that $40,000, there could be consulting fees included, but also hardware if you need to upgrade your sub-metering system and things like that. So very, very helpful. And I can second and confirm that Germany still have that tax breaks. We have 6 sites in Germany. They are all ISO 50001 certified, not because of that, but the tax break really, really helped. Okay, we have a few more questions. And I think, Pete, there is another one for you from our own Maureen Talent, 3M director. Have you seen the certification process to be an opportunity for companies to collaborate together, share best practices to accelerate improvement?
I was hoping you would ask that one. Okay, I'll make sure I hadn't muted myself. Because yeah, first off, the photo that I showed there for our 3M training, and this is typically what happens with our Better Plants 50001 Ready trainings, is that sure, we had a lot of folks from 3M, different facilities, but also from some other suppliers, from other organizations that were nearby, even the utilities. That's been typical. I've been thrilled since I joined DOE 4 years ago, and it was kind of an offshoot of my former consulting work in the automotive industry, that while the companies that I work with typically are very competitive on certain things, when it comes down to essentially energy efficiency, I've found everybody very typical in the situation of just sharing best practices. And that's ultimately part of what we're trying to do on our website materials, is get a lot of those out there. We did one of our trainings in an automaker, and they invited not only their suppliers, but their competitors came there. Because in this case, we kind of feel like, we're all rowing in the same direction in terms of trying to get the environmental benefits out of saving energy. So yeah, thank you for asking the question, Maureen. It's been one of the most thrilling parts of my job is seeing that type of effort, and we're certainly going to try and foster as much of that as we can.
Thank you, Pete. And I bet that one of the most hot topics right now during the pandemic is virtual audits. So John, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. In the video, you mentioned that there are options for virtual audits, but I am very excited about this possibility. Very, very excited. So
we at the CWB are also very excited for it, because during the pandemic, it takes away the in-person visits, because a lot of companies are not allowing auditors or visitors into their facilities. We've seen a shutdown for probably 2 months where a lot of the audits have been rescheduled either out, or now that we have implemented the virtual audits, we've probably seen 50 plus audits taking place across our standards. It supports the support and the guidance from the auditor is unprecedented, because it's a total walkthrough from the time that they schedule the audit. We make sure that they're very comfortable with the process and what's going to take place, what is needed, and go on from there. We can, as the whole thing goes through, it's just a whole process that has taken our our business from probably delaying it 2-3 months due to the COVID-19 to doing it today and taking care of the customer to get them certified and on their way to registration today. We're starting to do a lot of the surveillance audits right now virtually. So in turn, what we're doing is we're continually progressing more and more every day with the audits. We have a great staff doing it. So I can't say enough.
I believe you have one. I believe you have one scheduled with us soon, sometime.
Yes, we
June.
do. Yes, we do. We have a couple coming up here and get those taken care of. So
very exciting times. We are running out of time. We only have 3 minutes left. So maybe a quick question for you, Pete. How energy cost will be reduced by ISO 50001? I can also talk a little bit about it, but you've talked to many companies, so you can probably answer that better than I can.
I missed part of the question there, Andrew. Did you say how energy cost?
How energy will be reduced by 50001?
Right. So I mentioned earlier, and again from the data we've seen, that a lot of it is those behavioral and cultural changes, or just understanding where the opportunities for improvement are that aren't necessarily, hey, we've got to do a big upgrade. Now, the idea behind 50001, we didn't go into too much detail about this, is essentially just working a continual improvement process where you have criteria for understanding what your improvement projects should be, and then you ultimately judge them against them and you prioritize. So in my consulting work, we did all sorts of stuff where somebody would come up with a big idea and would take a long time to get approval for it and the spending and implement it and do all that. And then you would go ahead and have some big ribbon cutting, and then everybody would go back to their normal day jobs. And that's fine and good. The idea behind all of this is like, okay, well, if that's good, once in a while, how about we think about that all of the time and always just have a list of things ready to go against whatever our current priorities are, to go ahead and implement them, whether they require a capital investment or not. So it's really just kind of a rethinking of managing your energy like you would manage inventory or anything else, and put it in that place where you're always trying to consider, what was the best use of our time right now in terms of making improvements on that. So, that's kind of a broad answer. Please reach out to us, and we have a lot of other materials that can go into it in a lot more detail.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Pete. Susanna, I think we need to wrap up soon. So there is one question for Alliance. Will these slides be distributed later?
You might be on mute, Susanna.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can absolutely distribute them later. This will also be, it is being recorded right now, and it will be posted on our website hopefully later this week. So if anyone would like to receive the slides, please feel free to send me an email. It's smcilroy@ase.org, and it's also on the Alliance website, my email address.
And also for these questions we didn't have time to answer, we will provide answers to them, and they will be available, I believe, through Alliance, right, Susanna?
Correct. I will send these through to the speakers that you can distribute.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for all of you to join us. I hope this experience was beneficial to you. I'm really excited about energy management, as all the speakers with me, and hopefully the entire audience. Thank you so much, and see you next time when we have another energy efficiency webinar.